On the 15th of October, in a churchyard in Lower Manhattan, singers from the Metropolitan Opera will stand among the graves and perform music from an opera about a boy who can't leave his. I'm Val from Opera Guide. This is the Week in Opera for August 23rd, 2026. Missy Mazzoli's Lincoln in the Bardo opens at the Met on the 19th of October and runs to the 14th of November. And this week, the company announced that preview with Trinity Church ahead of it. Ticket holders get cast members singing excerpts, a conversation with the people who made it, and a tour of the graveyard. It's a graveyard opera being previewed in a graveyard, which is either very good instincts or very good nerve. The opera comes from George Saunders's novel, which won the Booker Prize. It imagines the night Abraham Lincoln went back to the crypt where his 11-year-old son Willie had been laid and couldn't bring himself to leave. The Bardo is the place between one life and the next, and Saunders fills it with the dead who watch a president come apart and decide to help. Royce Vavrek wrote the libretto, Liliana Blaine-Cruz directs, Yannick Nézet-Séguin conducts, and Peter Mattei sings Lincoln, with Christine Goerke, Stephanie Blythe, and Anthony Roth Costanzo among the spirits. Here's the part that makes this more than a big opening night. It's the first main stage opera by a woman that the Met has both commissioned and premiered on its own. Mazzoli is the fifth woman in the company's history to have a work staged there at all. The Met is 140-odd years old, and it first commissioned a woman in 2018, approaching Mazzoli and Janine Tesori together. 8 years from that call to this opening is fast for an opera and slow for an institution. And it caps a year almost nobody in this art form gets. On the 9th of August, Mazzoli's other new opera premiered at the Edinburgh International Festival from Scottish Opera and Opera Ventures. The Galloping Cure tells the opioid crisis as a fable. A doctor in a failing American town can't reach her patient's pain, and then a showman arrives with a carousel that takes the pain away, and the first ride is free. Tom Morris directed, Daniela Mack sang the doctor. The reviews were strong rather than unanimous, and I'd rather tell you that than round it up. The Scotsman gave it 4 stars, the Edinburgh Reporter 3. 2 premieres in 10 weeks on 2 continents. Now the story underneath the whole week, which is that nobody is permanently running some very large parts of this art form. English National Opera has an interim chief executive. Jenny Mollica stepped down in May after 6 years to run the Roundhouse in Camden. Her successor is Helen Shute, who has run the dance company Rambert since 2017. Shute doesn't take up the post until November, and she'll be running the London Coliseum as a business at the same time, so the company is being held rather than led, for about 6 months, by Paul Reeve. Consider what's on that desk. Arts Council England took E&O's £12.5 million annual grant away in 2022 and told the company to leave London. The compromise was Greater Manchester by 2029, while E&O keeps the Coliseum and stages a full London season there every year. 2 homes, 1 company, and a 100th birthday in London coming up. Opera Australia has been in its own version of this for 2 years. Its director of opera, Joe Davies, left in August 2024, under a year into the job, over what the company called differences about balancing artistic ambition against commercial reality. The chief executive left a few months after that, and the company posted a $10 million deficit before reporting a substantial turnaround last year. Amy Lane starts next month after 7 years running the Copenhagen Opera Festival, and before that, as head staff director at the Royal Ballet and Opera in London. She joins a chief executive and a music director, who both arrived within the past year, so Australia's national company effectively has an entirely new leadership from September, and Salzburg, the largest festival there is, still doesn't know. Marcus Hinterhäuser left in April after falling out with the supervisory board. Karen Bergman is holding it on an interim basis and has said flatly that she won't stay past 2027. 21 people applied by the June deadline, 4 women and 17 men, and the hearings begin next month. Barry Kosky is the name being said out loud, and when an Austrian magazine asked him straight out whether he'd applied, he said Salzburg is the capital of rumors, and that's precisely why he wouldn't tell them. Opera is planned 4 and 5 years out. Singers are booked that far ahead, co-productions are negotiated that far ahead, and a season announcement is only the visible end of decisions taken when nobody was watching. An empty chair now is a hole in 2029. Northern Ireland Opera announced the rest of its Carmen cast this week. Thomas Chenhall sings Escamillo, and Niall Anderson sings Zuniga, joining Ruby Dibble in her role debut and Noah Stewart as Don Jose. Cameron Menzies directs and Greg Arrowsmith conducts, and it opens at the Grand Opera House in Belfast on the 12th of September. It's the company's first ever Carmen. On Thursday, they held a public panel about it, called Behind the Curtain, subtitled Muse, Martyr, and Murder Victim. Menzies has said the production sets out to confront the trope of the tragic heroine directly. So before a note is sung, the company is arguing in public about what its own opera means. 8 weeks after Belfast closes, Irish National Opera brings its Carmen to the Bordgeist in Dublin with Niamh O'Sullivan for 4 nights from the 2nd of November. 2 national companies, 1 island, the same opera, 2 very different intentions. On Friday, Covent Garden opened its own building after dark. After hours ran from 5:30 until 11:30, with the props department, rehearsal studios, and costume rooms open, talks on stage fighting and on what a chorus actually does, and a silent disco under the glass canopy of the Paul Hamlin Hall. Museums have run late nights for 20 years, and opera houses have mostly watched. The old argument was that you don't hold a disco in a temple. The new one is that a great many people won't buy a ticket to a building they've never been inside. Whether it converts is a separate question, and nobody has good numbers yet. Riccardo Muti has conducted the Verdi Requiem for the last time. He led it in Salzburg with the Vienna Philharmonic on the 15th and 18th of August, and the Frankfurter Allgemeine reported afterwards that he won't take it up again. He turned 85 in July, and he hasn't said why. Conductors have retired from pieces before and come back to them. Cast changes. A thin week, and I'd rather say so than pad it. The tenor Dave Monaco has stepped into a Rossini Stabat Mater, replacing René Barbera, who withdrew with a persistent cough and said so himself. A cast change isn't a disappointment. It's what a live art form looks like. Watch this week's Opera Vision has Verdi from the Opernfestspiele Heidenheim on Friday the 28th of August at 7 in the evening Central European Time, which is 6 o'clock here, free and on demand afterwards. The week after that, Bellini from the Teatro Regio in Turin. In New Zealand, the national company runs a free introductory session called Curious About Opera in early September, ahead of the Pearl Fishers opening in Auckland on the 23rd. And in Galway yesterday, the Esker Festival gave Cavalleria Rusticana in concert at St. Nicholas's Collegiate Church. From the archive, the word this week is cover. A cover learns the entire role, sits through the rehearsals, and does not go on. Every night, in every house, somebody is in the building, fully prepared to sing a part they may never sing. Most of the time, nothing happens. Then occasionally, the phone rings. In 1975, Mirella Freni came out of La Bohème at La Scala, and a Romanian soprano who had made little impression in Italy went on as Mimi. By the end of the night, Ileana Cotrubaș had a career. She died on Thursday at 87. Children's Radio Choir in Bucharest at 9, Covent Garden debut in 1971, 50 performances of Mimi at the Met, retired in 1990, taught Angela Gheorghiu. She spent much of her retirement arguing loudly that directors had dragged opera away from what composers actually wrote. That's what a cover is, not insurance. Somebody's whole life waiting for a phone call. One thought before I go, and this is opinion rather than news. The Met is about to stage a ghost story by a living composer on the biggest stage in America, 8 years after it first thought to ask a woman for one. Belfast is arguing in public about what its Carmen means. Covent Garden is letting strangers wander its corridors with a drink in hand. All three are answers to the same question, which is why anyone who isn't already here would come. And all three were decided by somebody holding a job that in London and Sydney and Salzburg is right now empty or borrowed. Cotrubaș would have had a great deal to say about who gets handed that power, and she'd have said it loudly. Opera is global, alive, and always worth listening to closely.